let's just jump in, Carly. Let's go straight in and tell me what were you born into? What did the world look like when you arrived?
Wow. Okay. So I was born on the Wirral, so that's where I'm from. So for anyone who doesn't know it, that is an amazing place that's near Liverpool, so just south of over the water from Liverpool. I just think I had a very normal upbringing. I was, two parents, an older brother. Yeah, just a very normal working class upbringing, I would say. So my dad was an electrician. So he trained in that straight out of school. So actually left school before he did any exams and went straight into being trained in an electrician and built his whole career in that. And he spent literally his whole life in that trade. About halfway through his career, he bought out a shop, an electrician's shop, and then my mum ran the shop. So they essentially worked together. So she ran the shop, and he was out going into people's homes and fixing all their electrics. So that was very much life. Yeah, my older brother was 2 years older, so just very very normal, safe,
Ha-
happy, healthy
yeah,
upbringing.
lovely. It sounds really, really idyllic. And how old were your parents when they got married, or when they had kids, when they had
So
your brother
my
and you?
parents actually they got together when they were 14 and 15.
Amazing.
Oh, really, really.
Wow. And they're still with us. They're still together.
They're still with us and they're still together. So they got married when they were sort of, I think, 19 and 20. And then my brother came along when they were sort of 24, 25. I came along when they were 26, 27. So I think all very normal for their generation. Met young, married young, had kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'd been together a while by the time kids came along.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
my dad would always say he knew very early that he'd got onto a winner and he wasn't going to let her go. So yeah,
Nice.
they're
That's
still
really
really
sweet.
happy now.
That's so sweet. It just makes me think my kids are 18 and 20, so I really better start paying attention.
No, absolutely. And we do talk about that. I mean, my daughter is nearly 19 and my son is nearly 17. I mean, I met my first husband when I was 18. And so, yeah, I do
Yeah.
think about that now that the kids are older, but I think
Yeah.
things are a little bit different now. Everybody paces themselves a little bit more as they go into adult life.
Yeah. I'm not quite ready to be a grandparent, I got to say. So,
No,
so,
me neither.
so so I'm just kind of trying to imagine you growing up,
Yeah.
and what was Carly like as like at school,
I
like primary school,
was
secondary school?
I was always a hard worker at school. I wouldn't say I was naturally talented at anything in particular, but I just worked hard enough at everything that I made good grades. So I did pretty well at school. I went to a grammar school. So the Wirral was in an 11 plus system. So you either went to your local high school, or if you passed the 11 plus, you went off to a grammar school. So I actually went to the same grammar school that my mum had gone to,
Ah, nice.
which was
Yeah.
really nice. So yeah, so I did well. I enjoyed school. It
Was it
worked.
a girls' grammar or co-ed?
It was an all girls grammar. Yeah, it was actually funny because my brother went to the same school that my dad had gone to, and I went to the same school
Ah,
that my mum had gone to. His was all boys, mine was all girls. So yeah, that was on West Kirby, in West Kirby on the Wirral. Really, yeah, good school. And I think I just the sort of methodology of you put in the work, you get the result just worked for me. So I just worked hard. It was less about the sort of love of learning necessarily, and more just the spirit of if I work hard, I get a good grade, and that return on investment that I could feel from that worked for me.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so
Um,
school was always good, and then I think the other thing for me going through that period of life was that I always worked as well. So I started probably from about the age of 12. I had part-time work, and then I consistently was working throughout the whole of high school. So I think I was just always quite driven, always pretty hardworking. I wanted independence. I wanted my own money. Um, and so yeah, I started off working in my mum and dad's shop. So I would go in and
mm,
I would be cleaning all the toasters and kettles and all the things that they were selling in the shop and dusting and doing things like that. Um, then I took a job in a flapjack kitchen, which was so random, which was basically just a woman who she was self-employed and she was running a business where, those little flapjacks in the little plastic packages that you see on counters in newsagents and different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
those. So even in there was stages of the work that seemed to be better or worse. And the pinnacle of success in that kitchen was that you made it to packing the boxes, because then you were in the air-conditioned area at the end of the kitchen and you were
Right.
basically looking at the orders that had come in and packing up the boxes. The worst place to be was at the heat of the kitchen at the other end where all the ovens were in. So you sort of worked your way up.
You worked your way out the production line.
Yeah, to be in at the end. And I remember that I used to do 4 hours on a Saturday morning and the hourly rate was £1.10. So I literally came away with £4 coins and two 20p pieces in a brown envelope at the end of that Saturday.
Incredible. Yeah.
And then I took a job in an ice cream shop in Parkgate on the Wirral. So it's a very famous ice cream shop. And so then I worked there from about the age of 14, I think, all the way through till leaving uni. And I even went back there when I came back from uni as well. So that was then my core work. So always worked hard, always wanted to be earning money. I think I was just probably always quite grown up. I was always quite old for my age.
Mm-hmm.
Probably on balance, always in a rush to get to the next stage of life. So I was in a rush to get to uni. I was in a rush to learn to drive and have a car. I was in a rush to get a job, moving into family life. And I probably did all those things earlier maybe than was the norm for my generation, just because I was sort of always ready for the next thing.
Yeah, interesting. And it sounds like maybe that kind of mindset that you had to, that sense of you work hard, you get rewarded, like it's sort of very practical, very common sense.
Yeah.
It's like you join the dots quite easily like that. That sounds like maybe that was also a mirror from your parents, right? Like they worked hard, they got rewarded for their work.
Yeah.
Just going to make sense.
They always worked. And I think, it was a household where like you didn't moan about stuff. You just got on with it. So it was just like, well, you just get on and get it done. There's no point dwelling on something, moaning about something. It's like you put in the work, you get the result. And so that was very much what I observed from them. They worked their whole lives.
Yeah.
And definitely then, that rubbed off just generally in the household.
Yeah, it sounds like you were really clear about what you were about from very early on. And were you close with your bro growing up? He's 2 years ahead of you.
Yeah, so I mean, we're literally sort of 23 months apart. So we definitely had the phase of life where we were kind of, kicking each other and whacking each other and arguing about everything.
Yeah.
And then I think in our later teenage years, so in those sort of 15, 16, 17, and then through university, we were very close. So that's, I would go and visit him at university. I would go out and hang out with him and his friends. And so as we got older, definitely got very close. But as all siblings who are very close in age, we definitely had that period of time where we would have argued about everything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. There's early teens. And then when you get into those older teens, hopefully, I observe it I've observed it in my kids. They're kind of through it now, I'd say. And with their peers, that there's just a phase where they're all so horrible to each other.
Yeah.
They just really are. They're brutal. Yeah. And then they kind of pop out of it and go, oh, actually, it's kind of cooler to be nice to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's less to prove. So, did your bro have a similar kind of mindset? Was that just very much the kind of family paradigm? Or?
I think we probably fell into the typical gender stereotypes of boys and girls going through school, where I probably worked harder than he did. But I actually think on balance, he's probably more naturally intelligent than me. So he managed to sort of navigate through school, having put in a little bit less effort maybe, but was able to get the results because he's pretty smart as well.
And then was there any point in that schooling phase where you had a real clear sense of this is what I want to do in the world? Or was it more just like head down, work hard, get on to the next rung?
Yeah, I never knew what I wanted to do, really. I think I was always I saw everything as a stage gate to the next thing. So getting the GCSEs was just a stage gate to getting in and doing the A-levels. Getting the A-levels was just a stage gate to get into university. And for me, university wasn't training, directing me towards any particular vocation. university was freedom. That's me. I can move out, and that's the beginning of my adult life. So that was for me the purpose of university. So I remember sitting with used to get the printed prospectuses for all the unis, and I would sit there with a stack of them, and I was sort of reading through them all and just literally browsing the courses, trying to figure out which one to do, almost just like a pick and mix.
Yeah.
And so my only focus really at that stage was doing something that I knew I would enjoy. Because I was like, if I enjoy it, I'll work hard. If I can work hard, I'll get a good result.
Yeah.
And so that was what it was all about for me. And at that stage, my brother had gone to university, but before that, my parents didn't. And so there wasn't huge experience in the household about what university life would be like or how one should make these decisions. So I think I literally just remember myself just sitting curled up on the sofa in the living room with my parents sitting there probably watching TV, and I'm just flicking through going, oh, I wonder if I should do this, or I wonder if I should go here.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really, really kind of just like on a whim almost.
Yeah.
But was there enthusiasm from your parents for you both to go to uni? They were keen that should happen. Yeah.
Hugely, because I think my dad left school before he even did his GCSEs.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily out of choice, right? So I think he would have quite liked to stay at school and carry on. But that wasn't the environment that he was in. That wasn't, what was possible to happen. And so he had to leave school and start to earn. And he and his twin brother, they, left. I think my dad stayed a little bit longer than his brother, but they just both went into a vocation, and then it was contributing to the household. So I think he definitely brought a sense of wanting us to be able to go as far as we wanted to go and not feel any sense of restriction. And then if I look at my mum, my mum, she carried on through school a little bit longer than he did and covered off all of her exams. But then when you go into the world of work, I think she would have loved to have been a career woman.
Mm-hmm.
It just, when you had kids, you stayed at home. And so she adjusted her ambitions and her life accordingly. So there was definitely a sense of each of them would have had a level of restriction because of the environment they were in, and they wanted that not to be the case for us. So I was always to do exactly what I wanted to do. And I think because I was very, probably like old-headed in the sense of like I was quite clear what I wanted to do. I wasn't uncertain about it. I didn't need a lot of support with my decision making. I was very, very clear, and they just supported me in doing the things that I wanted to do.
Really powerful. Yeah. So really supportive parents who really want to see you guys fly and to grab every opportunity available, and coming from that context of where they maybe had to, opportunity was restricted for them at a circumstance, so very motivated to ensure that you guys could take every opportunity that was available. But then it also sounds like, it's a culture where you got to work hard for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
To make it happen.
Yeah.
And so you're leafing through the prospectuses, and what do you land on?
I landed on criminology. I went to Lancaster University, and the great thing about Lancaster University, I don't know if they still do it now, but it was brilliant then. You could choose a major if you like. So my major that I chose was criminology, but you could study two other things alongside it. So you essentially in your first year had 3 subjects running in parallel with each other. And then by the end of the first year, you had to drop the other 2 and specialize. And so it gave me the chance to try criminology, even though I'd never studied it at this point. But I bolstered it with politics, which I had studied through A-level. So I was like, okay, that's a bit more grounded in something that I know what that could be like. And then philosophy. So I sort of had politics as my known, and then philosophy and criminology as my 2 sort of wild cards.
Yeah.
And then I just loved criminology. So that's what I then zoomed in on through the second and third year. And I think that for me is all just grounded in what is it about how people think and how they make decisions that leads them down one path versus another path. And if you can deeply understand that, how could you then change course, rehabilitate, do things in a different way? So in my sort of ambitions as I was leaving university, I think the place where I thought I would end up was somewhere in that system. So whether it was in the probation service or in the prison service, I think the prison service was the one that I was more focused on. I spent quite a lot of time through university visiting different prisons and experiencing what
Hmm.
that world was like, with a view that I just felt that could be done differently. So if you're going
Yeah.
to prison and immediately reoffending, that's not working. So I definitely had a very idealistic mindset about how potentially that could be different. And so I thought what I was going to do when I left university would be to apply for the prison service, like graduate program, where they bring people in and you sort of go through the ranks relatively quickly on a training
Hmm.
program. But I felt as I was leaving university, because I was young in my year as well, I'd like just turned 21. I was like, maybe I just need some life experience before I tackle that. So I went home and started looking for a job with a view that I would come back and apply for that scheme the following year. And then I just sort of stumbled into my career sort of by chance, and then that just took me in a different direction. So I never went back on.
Interesting. Oh wow. So is that still an itch you feel like you want to scratch at all? Like that sort of.
It is, yeah. I always think like when I hit a point where my life is a bit less manic, I don't know when that's going to be, but it's
Mm.
definitely not right now with a house full of teenagers. But when my life's a bit less manic, I would like to do more work in the community in that space. And
Mm.
it definitely is an itch I'd like to scratch. And I think it was definitely a fork in the road where my life could have gone, my career life at least could have gone in a very different
Mm.
direction.
Just as a sidebar, I've been doing a little bit of work recently with a charity called Key for Life, and they work with offenders in prisons. And it's been really fascinating for me personally,
Yeah.
and really inspiring, actually, really inspiring work. And I realized that I was thoroughly freaked out by the idea of prison, just the idea of
Mhm.
losing your liberty and all of that. And so um, it's been it's been quite an experience to go into prisons and
Yeah.
meet the guys who are serving sometimes long sentences.
Yeah.
And then just the idea of, I mean, it's a system that's so in need of transformation in so many ways.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Anyway,
sounds
so maybe that's a conversation that we can have another time. Uh,
Yes.
so did you love uni, by the way?
I did love uni. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed university. I enjoyed the independent living, the if that sense that you're in your adult life, but it's safe and it's protected. So for example, like Lancaster University is literally up a hill. So it's a campus university where you literally go up a hill to get to it. And so it's just this safe little bubble at the top of a hill. And I think in my first term, I barely left campus. Like there was just no need to. Everything was there. And so it felt like this really safe, contained environment. I loved going to lectures. I enjoyed the whole thing. I think the main thing for me was just the independent living and feeling like that next stage of life was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. And then you said so you went back home and you stumbled into your career. So how did that get started? And it's funny, isn't it? How a bit like choosing uni, flicking through
Yeah,
prospectuses, like you look back on a really kind of stellar career, and you kind of go, yeah, it started with this like random coincidence or something like that. But what was
yeah.
your story? How did that start?
I went back home, and it was a weird one actually because I went back home from uni and then started thinking about work. I think something didn't go quite right at the end of uni in terms of us being really encouraged into the world of work. So I literally landed back at home in the May, June, or whenever it is that you leave. And I immediately went back and started working at the ice cream shop. So I was straight away earning some money. So I had that on the go. And I had a friend.
More than a quid an hour at this point.
By that point, it was more than £1 an hour. Yes. And so a friend of mine who I'd gone to school with she hadn't gone to university, and she was working at a new telephone bank. So it was basically an American company that had set up a telephone bank, and it was one of the first telephone banks to land in the UK. And they had a big office in Chester. So I was back living at home in Pensby on the Wirral back in my old bedroom in my parents' house. And she said, "Oh well, I'll get you a job, like an interview for a job on the phones." it's good money, and then you can figure out what you want to do and apply for things later. So she got me through the door for an interview for what was called a customer assistance representative, which actually would have been collections calling. So I would have been one of those people who, if you've got a credit card debt that you haven't paid back, was calling you up to try and figure out what a payment plan would look like. So not an easy job by any stretch. And as I was going through those interviews, I was interviewed by one of the managers who was also responsible for setting up a management development program that they were running within the business. So it was called a management internship program because it was for fully internal people. But because it was a place where lots of graduates went, lots of young people, there was lots of people who had huge potential, lots of ambition. And so they had this annual program where they picked off sort of 10, 12 people, put them together into a program and basically fast track them through learning about the business. It was always internal. You'd always done a year or two of paying your dues on the phone, so to speak, before you were able to access this program. And sort of as I was going through my interviews, they sort of asked me, they sort of commented that this program was happening and did I want to explore it. I had literally no idea what they were talking about. I had no idea, in essence, what I was interviewing for. They just asked me, could I stay and see a few more people? So I think I was there for about 5 hours in the end. And I just was passed from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And I ended up being interviewed by what was essentially like the chief people officer of that business. And so I left just completely exhausted, but I sort of wasn't able to prep for that, wasn't able to feel nervous about what I was interviewing for because I had no idea what I was interviewing for. I was just chatting to these people who were asking me lots of questions. And because I'd always worked, I worked at Ladbrokes while I was at university. So that gave me lots of different experiences to talk to. So I had tons of examples and things that I could talk about from a work context by this point. So these conversations just felt easy and normal and natural. And so the next day after all those interviews, I was at the ice cream shop. I was busy serving someone and I took a call and they just said, this must have been a Friday. I took the call and they said, we'd love to offer you the job, but we want to offer you to come onto our management internship program, but it starts on Monday. So I literally, from the Friday to the Monday, the salary was higher than the one I'd interviewed for. So literally my head was blown at this salary that I was going to walk straight into. So I just straight away accepted the job on the phone. But I mean, even just things at this point, I was like, oh my God, I haven't got a car. How am I actually going to get to this job? So I just said yes, and then thought, well, I've got the weekend to kind of figure out how I'm going to make all of this work. And that was then a 9-month program where basically you, as a group of 12, so there was 11 internal people and me, you moved around the business and learned each different business area. So you spent, 4 to 6 weeks in each business area, and that business area would welcome you, train you. If it was for example, if you were in customer support, they'd train you and put you on the phones and you would talk to customers. And then I did this rotation through marketing. And I thought of marketing as just being super creative, like literally, like you have to be able to almost, draw ideas from scratch and be like that kind of person. In this business, it was very commercial. It was very data driven. It was very numbers driven. And there was so much about it, which was trying to communicate with people based on how you perceive them to be thinking, that it just connected so well with everything I've been learning at university. And I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought marketing was. Like I thought marketing was this very, very, very creative end of life, which I never perceived myself to be. I would have always said I'm not a creative person. I'm actually a very creative thinker when challenged with something. But if you sort of lock me in a room and go, think of a brand new idea that no one's ever thought of, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm never going to get out of this room because I'm never going to. And so I was able to experience it and just go, okay, this really works for me. And then you do something and then you see a result and you're immediately rewarded by knowing that the thing you did worked. And you've to share. You can go, look, the thing that I had an idea and we did it and then it worked and I can see the result of it. Or the opposite, it didn't work and we learn and we do something different. And so as we were going through all the rotations, I knew that I wanted to go back into marketing at this point. That was where I wanted to be. And at the end of the 9-month program, it was a bit like apprentice style. You literally like queued up outside of an office and you were called in and an envelope was given to you. And this envelope would contain what the job was that you were going to go into literally the following Monday, what the grade would be that your role would be positioned at, because not everybody came out obviously at the same grade because people performed differently. And so at the end of it, I was handed this envelope and I was offered a role into the marketing team, and then it just all progressed.
What grade did you get? Can I ask?
So grades are so interesting, aren't they? So in my starting grade, it's all going to sound totally random, was 220. And so the next natural grade would be 221, which normally you would work maybe 18, 24 months in order to sort of move through grades. So I came out as a 222. So a really good, solid grade. But the best grade you could get was called a personal banking officer. So the next level up took you into this, like, because it was an American company, it had all these like military almost style titles. And so I was actually really disappointed because some people got personal banking officer.
Oh, okay.
And so that was my first sort of experience of having to sort of swallow that and move on. I was promoted to personal banking officer pretty quickly after that.
Good.
And to move 2 grades, having been in the business for 9 months.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it's one of those ones, isn't it, where the performance is outstanding, but you can still find a way to go, oh no, I feel gutted about it because someone else did better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was in that. I stayed in marketing in that business then for 10 years following that.
Wow. In that business for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. So, yeah, and isn't that fascinating? So that decision, but it starts to make sense in retrospect. So the decision to do criminology, because there's something about psychology, human behavior, but also that there are kind of data loops. It's data driven. There's a scientific approach. And then that was what was appealing in the marketing side. Because it's about human behavior, it's psychology, but that it's also data driven. It's science.
And I didn't realize any of that at the time, but when I reflect back on it, that was absolutely what it was. The fact that you had to sit there and think, I'm engaging with a huge group of people. They've all got busy lives. I need to figure out what's on their mind so that the thing I put in front of them is going to gain their attention. And then I can watch the data to see how good of a job I've done at that. Like, that's hugely rewarding. And I think definitely for me, I could, in that business at that point in time, there were some roles that were very long project roles that you would be working on something that would yield this end point in 2 years' time. And I literally couldn't think of anything worse than that. I was like, to not have any feeling of playback and positive reinforcement that the thing that you're doing is working well for 2 years just didn't feel like it would be that reward loop in my head that I needed. Whereas the fact that I could, and it's still in the business. I mean, now that you make a change today and feel it this afternoon, feel it this evening, feel it tomorrow. Like, I find that hugely rewarding. And to know really quickly if something isn't working, so you can go, oh, okay, bin that, move on. So that immediately.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a really nice point of kind of self-awareness in a way, that is something that makes a lot of sense to you, to get that feedback loop and be able to have the goal, take the action. Did it work? Didn't it work?
Yeah.
Next action. Really interesting. Just a bit of a sidebar. I was just thinking, you're describing your kind of entry into the workforce and how, there's a bit of business that, okay, you actually fast-tracked it because you got into the internal development program. But even if you weren't on the fast track, that there's a business there that's bringing creating an opportunity for people to come in at the ground level.
Yeah.
And that, so there's a way that people with ambition who want to work hard and start making their way can get a foothold. And it just occurred to me as you were saying that, I think it's probably something that we don't have enough of now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those jobs can be handled now through technology and AI, blah, blah, blah. But I was also thinking, and we don't have to get into this now, but actually Gymshark probably is one of those businesses that does have that intake. Maybe not, I don't know what the scale is, but it does. It seems to me that it's a business that is providing that opportunity for people to come in at the ground floor, and start to get their foot on the ladder.
Definitely, there's huge parallels for me where I am now versus those kind of early years in MBA. And I think just when you've got a lot of young people with ambition and with drive in one place,
Mhm.
it creates a real energy. And the thing about MBNA at that point in time was it was a meritocracy. So you worked hard and the rewards followed. So
Mm.
you didn't have to have been in a job for 10 years before the next thing was possible. It was very much a meritocracy. It was the kind of place where you could put up your hand and say, I really want to work on that. And somebody would make it happen. It was the kind of place where literally your manager would come to your desk and go, great news. We want you to take on this other role and it's starting on Monday and the desk's over there. So start packing up and move your things over there. And it was just an immediate opportunity. I never applied for a job in that business, but I did about 10 different jobs in the time that I was there. And it was because the mindset was to move people around. It also was the mindset of, if you see someone with talent, let's move them around so that we can round out their experience and other areas can benefit from them. And I think we don't do enough of that now. I think if somebody's good in their role, often people want to keep them in that team.
Yeah, right.
The right thing to do for that individual is probably to move them sideways. I also think I observe a little bit now of individuals now. I think, well, if I'm really good now, I've got a greater chance of going upwards if I stay here. If I go
Yes.
sideways, is that going to slow me down being able to move upwards?
Yes.
And I definitely experienced the opposite. The more sideways moves I did, the faster I moved upwards. And I think that's different.
Even within that same business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then were you not then just in the marketing groove then? Were you moving around?
So I was in marketing that whole time, but there were so many different bits to that business I moved around. So for example, I started off in the customer marketing space, which is dealing with existing customers that were already in the business. I then flipped to move into the acquisition team. So I was then in a totally different mindset of trying to introduce new consumers into the brand. Then I could work on marketing for Ireland. And then I was working on marketing for our business lending business. So I did some B2B. So there were so many pockets and individual elements of
Mm.
that business that whilst they were all under the very broad umbrella of marketing, they were all very distinct places to work within that business. It was a very marketing driven business as well. It was very much
Yeah.
that marketing was the driving force of that business. So if you were in marketing, there was just huge opportunity. And we were growing every year. There were huge growth ambitions. There was a desire for innovation. There was a test and learn mindset. It was okay if something didn't work as long as you learned and moved on. It was very much that kind of high energy, let's try it. You can have a crazy idea and it can be accepted. It was also just a business of really nice people. They were just good
Mm.
people. We had good values that the business operated on. So people were
Mm.
not soft with each other, but just people were nice.
Amazing. So you've got your head down, you're working hard, and 10 years fly by, and so then you're now really established in marketing in this amazing business that's been growing whilst you've been on that journey of learning. So then what happens? Why do you leave the business? What's the next opportunity?
So by this point, I had my two kids. I'd studied for a master's as well, distance learning. So I felt I needed a marketing qualification. I don't know why I felt that because I don't know that I did. I don't think it changed my career trajectory necessarily, but I felt I would feel better if I had like an educational grounding. So I did an MBA whilst I was having my children as well, which was an
That's a
intense,
lot. That's a lot. That's
intense period of time. And I was living sort of 10 minutes away from my parents. My kids were 2 and 4. I'd recently turned 30 and probably just had a midlife crisis of like, oh gosh, I've been at the same place for 10 years. I'm living down the road from where I was born.
Had you met your husband, your first husband? Did you meet at work or?
I met him at university.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're following your parents'
Yeah.
template there.
Yeah. So I met him when I was 18 and I was married at 22, which I think for my generation is really young.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And I think probably just highlights that point of me just always being in a bit of a rush for the next thing. So yeah, I think I was just having this general feeling of do I need to make a decision for something to be different? Like what else is there? Or is this what life is going to be like for the foreseeable?
Were you still married at that point?
I was still married at that
Yeah.
point. Yep. And so I got a call from an ex boss, so a senior leader who left MBNA and had gone to work at RBS, called me up and talked to me about an opportunity in that business, but it would require me to move either to Edinburgh or London in order to do that role. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm in this mindset of I need something different. This has happened at the same time. Is this a sign that I need to make a change and do something different? So I took the decision to move to RBS and move the family up to Edinburgh.
Big move.
Which, yeah, felt like an opportunity to experience a different environment, a different way of life. And I loved Edinburgh. I loved everything about living in Edinburgh. It's such an amazing place, other than the fact it is always colder than everywhere else. But I hugely, hugely enjoyed living there. And then I went into RBS. And I think because I'd stumbled into MBNA and then had these 10 amazing years in a business that just was a cultural fit for me, just perfection fit of culture, I probably just thought that's what all workplaces were like, right? Because I'd never experienced one that was something different. I went into RBS and realized quite quickly the culture was very different. And probably within a few months, just realized that it wasn't the place for me. It was the kind of place where at that point in time, bearing in mind this was sort of 2010, so we're post-financial crash, taxpayer owned, so it was a very different environment for banks at that point in time. It was very risk averse. So bearing in mind I'd come from a place that was high growth, high innovation, high appetite for test and learn, high appetite for mad ideas, into a place of we're just protecting market share. It's a steady ship. We just need to point it in this direction. We need to not take any risks. And so it didn't feel like what I could bring was needed there. And the idea of just holding onto a steering wheel of a boat and keeping it going in the same direction it had always gone, it was just so dull for me.
Yeah.
And I felt really held back. It felt, risk averse, too negative.
So just again, a sidebar question. But so you've gone from banking to banking. Are these quite male environments?
Very male environments.
Okay.
So I would say throughout all my leadership journey, there was often times where I was the only female in the room, or certainly in the minority in the room.
Yeah.
I stayed in financial services for 18 years. So the whole of my sort of developmental career stages, if you like, were in that kind of environment. It was a strange one at MBNA because whilst it was male dominated, there were lots of females that succeeded in that business because it was a meritocracy. And so it didn't ever feel like as a female I wasn't able to succeed. It was just that by chance there were more men.
Okay.
But that prevailed throughout the whole of those 18 years.
Yeah.
And it is quite tough to be the only female in a room.
Yeah.
The balance of conversation that's created by a gender balance in the room is really marked. I can see and feel the difference. As I've gone through my career, I'm now in a very balanced environment.
Yes.
To where I've experienced it earlier.
But it was okay. So it's interesting. Like, I mean, I know, Antonia, my wife. I mean, she's had some shit as a woman in the workplace, and the kind of stuff where you go, that just couldn't fly now. Like it just couldn't.
The worst one I had, I think, which was actually weirdly very well intentioned and delivered to me through somebody that I would still today say was a huge inspiration to me in loads of ways. But I was pulled into a room when I was very young. I was in my very early 20s. And it was brought to my attention that I'd gained some weight. And should I pay attention to that fact?
Wow.
I mean, I wanted,
and this was pertinent. This was pertinent to your professional role because
it wasn't. But it was somebody that I trusted,
right.
And he wasn't wrong. I had. And so it did give me the opportunity to just pay attention to healthy balance and all of the things that we
Okay.
need. But God, if that happened now, I mean, people would be fired for that kind of stuff, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
so that, that's probably the most extreme example. I've definitely had lots of times where I felt like I've been patted on the head of like, that's nice, but you're just a little girl, kind of responses. I think I just sort of knew that those things were there and carried on regardless. But I definitely built quite a strong corporate armor, I would say. I was well armed for what I would experience in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. Well, I mean, there's kind of a lot more that we could explore there, but I think for me, the kind of big takeaway is that you were able to navigate that, and in a way, there was something very undeterred on your part. Like you kind of got on with working hard and doing the work and making your way.
Exactly. I think just grounded in that belief of regardless of all of that, if you work hard, it comes good.
It comes
And so
good. Yeah.
I was always very heads down, working hard.
So then, okay. So then you then, it sounds like you're about to move on from RBS now. You've got
Yes.
bored there.
So
Like that's no longer.
so I stayed there 2.5 years, and the main reason would be I always just had the mindset of you can't stay anywhere less than 2 years. That just looked like too much of a blip on your CV. That was just the prevailing thought in my head. So I stayed.
I think that probably was true. Like that used to be. It probably isn't now, but
it probably isn't now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. I just sort of mentally knew I would leave, which gave me the peace to exist within the environment that I was in. So the mindset I approached that with them was just, okay, well, how do I gather as many learnings for me that help me as I possibly can? And how do I find my people in this organization and help cling to them to help, get through and make each day better? And there were some brilliant people that I worked with in that organization that I loved working with. And I think when you're in big companies like that, I do think you find your tribe. And so we just sort of supported each other through that period of time. I took on a couple of new roles. I was able to really add to my experience base, which was...
What level of seniority did you get to?
So I was in that business, I was at a head of department level.
Okay.
And then I moved over to, in fact, that's an interesting point. So I was head of department level at MBNA. I sideways moved into RBS at head of department level. I talk about this quite a lot when I talk to people about career paths. Every time I moved a company, it was a sideways move. I never left one company for another company for a promotion from a title perspective. And you could argue that's me having a lack of confidence in my own capabilities, or you could say that that's me really seeing the benefit of taking those sideways steps at a level that that you can operate really well at. And it's always allowed me to accelerate really quickly from that solid start point. Then I got a call about a role opportunity at Virgin Money. So Virgin Money they'd had a credit card business at this point for many, many years, and it had been run by MBNA. So one of the things MBNA did was they ran other people's credit card programs. So I'd worked on the Virgin Money credit card for many, many years at MBNA. And the Virgin Money business had taken a decision. They wanted to buy those customers and take that on for themselves. So they were building the business to bring customers into. So they essentially were trying to assemble a team of people who knew what this needed to look like because they'd done it before. And I was one of the people that came in to support the build of that business. And I think at this point, I was so clear about the culture that I wanted to be in that I was able to, I think it was the first time when I was interviewing for a job that I really felt that it was just a conversation both ways, because I was also sense checking that this was the right place for me to be. They were checking that I was the right person for the job. And so I think that sort of balanced conversation is something that feels very natural now, but was probably the first time that I was experiencing it there. And I absolutely loved it. So I went into this blank sheet of paper, we need to design what our online customer journey is going to look like. We need to design how we're going to acquire customers. We need to design our
very cool, yeah,
statement, all of our communication. So I basically was responsible across all of the marketing for that business build.
Amazing. Yeah. So you came in to lead that, really?
Yeah, so I came in to lead essentially the marketing component
Yeah.
of that program. And there were other people that I'd worked with before from MBNA
Okay.
that were also
Cool.
brought in to manage other elements of that business build. So
And
that was
and was this a geographic move as well?
another geographic move because that business was based in Newcastle. So
Okay.
I've gone from the Wirral up to
Yeah.
Edinburgh and then down at this point to
Yeah.
Newcastle. So again, all the family moved.
Move the family.
Yeah, so we were all we all up sticks and moved into Newcastle.
So how long were you at Virgin?
I was there for 5 years and I only left because the business was bought out by another business and it created a level of disruption.
Were there places for you to go within the business there? Were you moving up the ladder?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So what level were you at after 5 years?
so I was then at director level.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So when that business was bought out, I had the opportunity to take a role within that business or to take a redundancy opportunity and move on. So at this point, I'm actually living in Chester. So Virgin Money opened an office in Chester, so I had the opportunity to move back closer to home. I was divorced at this point, so I'm living in Chester on my own with my two kids. They were
So that had happened. The
that
divorce had
happened
happened
in
in
Newcastle.
Newcastle.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and then
So you're in
so I'm living
Chester.
in
Yeah.
Chester, fully responsible for these two kids. This, feeling the weight of that from a financial responsibility perspective, and then I'm faced with this decision of, do you stay or do you take a redundancy package, which felt really irresponsible. I was like, that's the
Right.
really irresponsible move, because the responsible move is this one over here where
Yeah.
you've got a salary that pays the mortgage, that keeps the roof above your kids' heads. Like
Yeah.
that was the responsible move. But I'd also at this point been in financial services for 18 years. So I'm a marketing professional, but I've always been in banking. So I've sort of by accident become a banker. There wasn't much I didn't know at that point about financial services regulation and all of the laws and everything that you needed to do. But to me, marketing was something that I should easily be able to apply to another sector. But if I've never done that, how will I ever know? And so it took me a good few weeks to navigate personally how I felt about that decision and the risk that I would be absorbing. But I decided to take the redundancy. And I was working my notice period, knowing that I was going to have my redundancy, and I already found another job even before the notice period finished. So I didn't have to worry for too long.
Yes.
But that's the point that I stepped into the retail industry. So I went to work for a company called the Very Group, which it's essentially a retailer, but it's underpinned by a financial services offering. So all of that financial services experience is super relevant. But I was able to move into the retail side of that business.
Okay.
And
And you went in as what role?
director.
Director.
So sideways move.
Yeah, sideways move.
Yeah.
Director of marketing.
So I went in, the longest job title in the history of the world. It was something like Director of Performance Marketing and Customer Management. So I had all of the digital marketing and essentially CRM activities, but not things like brand and creative, because there was a CMO in that business and there were other directors who reported into the CMO. But as I joined, they let me know that the CMO was moving on and there was no CMO in place. So within on reflection, must have only been a few weeks of working there, I was offered the chance to be the interim CMO. And then I was asked if I wanted to be considered for that role whilst they did an external search. So I was basically working in interim in that role, an external search happening. I was interviewed and then I was offered that CMO role as a permanent position.
As a permanent position, okay.
Yeah, it's sort of maybe 4 or 5 months after being in there.
Okay.
And I had things like creative studio that, I'd never had before, like this product moving through and there's models and there's casting and like all of these exciting new things to learn about. A world away from banking. So I loved the shift into retail. It's so fast-paced. It's so high energy. You're talking about something that people are actually interested in. Like, to get people interested in their finances is so difficult. Yeah. To get somebody interested in buying some new clothes is like such an exciting thing that people want to engage with. And so it was just a completely different marketing challenge from my perspective. And to have a physical product at the center of your marketing, which you don't have in financial services, you're having to create messages just from nothing, really, just felt like a really energizing new space for me.
And so is this the business before you joined Gymshark?
That's right. Yeah.
So how long were you with that business?
I was there for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And I would have stayed. I wasn't out looking. I was very happy in that business. It's a great business. It's based just outside of Liverpool, so close to home, really familiar. Again, a business of really great people. But then I got a call from a headhunter who had tried to describe the business to me without saying the name because it was an NDA
Yeah.
opportunity. But they described it as a unicorn business, and then I was like, well, then it's Gymshark because there's literally
Yeah.
no other business in the UK that could have fulfilled the criteria
Hmm.
that they were describing, and I just thought, oh, that feels like a conversation that's worth having.
Mm. And so, but you're not being offered the CMO role.
Nope.
You're coming in at
This was a
director.
marketing. Well, it was essentially a marketing director role, but the title of it was VP of Marketing, which was a weird
Yeah.
American title, I think, at that point
Yeah.
in time. So on paper, grade wise, it's backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So just tell us about that transition. What convinced you?
So I just started meeting with people as part of the interview process, and I think I met lots of different people. So there was people who obviously they wanted to interview me, and then there was people that I asked to meet with as part of what I wanted to learn more about as I was going through that process. And I think I I really enjoyed talking to everybody that I spoke to. Everybody was really different, which allowed me to really see that different types of people can be successful here and they can all work together and get the best from each other. So that was really positive. I was really excited by the scale of the opportunity. So, at that point, the business would have been sort of just coming up to 10 years. So, had that very early fast growth at a point where we needed a really clear strategy and a really purposeful step forward. I was like, well,
Mm.
that's I feel like I've learned at this point that that's my niche. That's where I can bring a lot of
Mm.
value. Having done something very similar at Virgin Money in that kind of stage. It was a global opportunity. So the Very Group was a broader role with on paper a more senior title, but it was UK based. This was a narrower role, but it was the opportunity to learn about what it's like to market across European countries in different languages and different currencies and kind of bring breadth from a different perspective. And so I did pause on it for a long time. It's a really tough thing to take a change in your title.
Yeah.
And but it's never been at the top of my list. So it's always been a tough thing to swallow, but I've always got there because it's never the most important thing to me. And so when I stacked up at that point, what was more important to me? Working somewhere in a culture that works for me, with people who I enjoy spending time with, in an innovative environment where growth is the focus. And I've got an opportunity to broaden my skills into this global mindset and work for a brand, right? Which is different to working for a retailer. So at the Very Group,
Yes.
I'm marketing other people's brands.
Yeah.
So that's a very different kind of retail role. This was in a brand. And so it brought so much that I sort of just had to bet on myself that I could work my way up.
Yeah. Which actually is the bet you've always made.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly the bet I've always made, which is I'll
Yeah.
go in and I know I can add value here at this level. And I bet on myself that opportunities will come from that.
Yeah. So okay. So that's really because we're not quite in the present, but we are at Gymshark now, and I've been kind of really interested to hear the story of leaving uni to Gymshark, because I think there probably are lots of lessons there around how you navigated that. And on the one hand, you might go, well, one thing led to another, or and I never could have planned it and all of that. But actually, there are some really strong through lines around backing yourself for sure. Like really kind of, there's something about, maybe it's not quite the right way of framing it, but it's like head down and put the work in, and you will get rewarded over time. And maybe there's a lesson there for all of us, and maybe there's a lesson there for people coming into the work environment where maybe it feels like nothing's happening fast enough. I'm always in a hurry to get to the next level. It's like, no, that's okay. Like it'll come. Like just put the work in, put the time in, show up, and you will get that reward.
Yeah, I think it's trust. To me, that's just like a trust the process kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone will get promoted before you that maybe you think shouldn't have done, but over time, you can trust the process and those things wash themselves out.
Yeah.
Great people who are talented at what they do, opportunities will come over a longer time horizon.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a nice thing for folks to be reminded of. And so at this point, Carly, what would you say you think you've learned about leadership? Because you've been in leadership now. You've worked up into leadership and you've been in leadership. Okay, you've gone a slightly sort of downward move in a way, but you're still in a leadership role.
Yeah.
What is it you think you've learned about leadership at this point?
Ooh. I think my approach to leadership had evolved to this point where I just enjoy getting the best out of people. And I think by this point, I'd realized that there are lots of different types of people and lots of different ways of doing things. And actually, my role as a leader is to help that person be the best success in the way that they operate. If I take myself to earlier in my career, I probably would have been very focused on, but this way.
This is the model. This is the model.
Yeah. So if something came to me in like a weird format and I thought it should be in a different format, I'm like, well, it should be in this format. I think by this point, I was probably a calmer leader in that sense of recognizing that it didn't always need to be exactly my way or exactly perfection, because I am a weird perfectionist control freak, and that's a whole thing of its own, which is definitely still there in me. But I think by this point, I was just like, harnessing the power of people is amazing. And so I always remember somebody gave me the advice when I was recruiting for roles that sometimes when you're recruiting for a role, it feels like you haven't got time to recruit for the role. And they were like, but what else on your to-do list will buy you 40 hours a week? And you're like, oh, yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Let's prioritize that and let's get people really firing on all cylinders. And the bigger your team gets, the more that becomes true, right? So it's like, if my time is invested in making these 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people more successful, wow, the impact of that versus just me on a hamster wheel trying to do all this stuff is so much greater. I think that for me at that point, and recognizing that me doing stuff wasn't where value was generated for the business, me guiding and supporting and unblocking and coaching would allow me to 5x, 10x, 20x the results, because all those people were able to go and be more effective at what they did.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is one of the great insights of moving into leadership and increasingly as you go up in the tiers of leadership, which is a challenging one when you've probably got into leadership because you're a great operator.
Yeah.
And you're someone who loves that. Like, I see what needs to be done. I take the action, get the feedback, that operational excellence. And then recognizing that actually that's not what's being asked of you. It's about how do you bring other people up? How do you empower the other? How do you enable, empower, like you say, help other people succeed, which is a different thing, right?
It's really different. And it's hard. I'm one of those people who would have, even though I've already done a task, I would write it on my to-do list just so I could tick it off. Like,
yeah, I love that. I love that.
Like, I like the recognition of I did lots of stuff, right? And the way that I built my career was saying yes to lots of things, working really hard, working long hours, doing extra projects, doing stuff, right? So a volume of execution and the quality of that execution was what made me successful. And so this shift into thinking about it very differently, I think, was definitely, as I moved from financial services into retail and growing my roles, that was definitely the moment where that shifted for me. And because you hit a point where you'll go no further if you can't do that, because the volume of work you would have to do if you carried on with that approach is just untenable. If you've got 100 people in your team and you're still trying to be on top of everything and do everything, you're only going to fail.
Yeah, it can't work. And it's interesting. So like right now you're now chief digital officer. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes.
got the
Yeah.
right title. So and you're really rocking in the role, and it's like you're really flying. You're really getting to exercise, your skills and talents at that level. But when we first met, that was like there was something like a. It's like you were where you were, and you're wanting to get to where you are now. And
Yeah.
I don't just mean about the role, like the title, but more like you were already super successful, but it was like there was something like there's another level that I want to go to
Mm.
in terms of the impact I'm having and all of that. And and so I just wonder if you could reflect on what that was for you, because to me it seemed like something very significant, and maybe it's kind of an interesting one because it's like, look, you were already flying, but then it seems like you've just hit a whole nother level now. So what was it that changed there?
Yeah, I think for me, so at that point when we started working together, I was operating at a director level, and my ambition was to be part of the executive team. I wanted to be a direct report to a CEO and part of the executive team. So although I'd been a CMO at the very group, there were chiefs at various levels in that business. So I wasn't a direct report to the CEO. I reported through a managing director. And so I had an appetite to get to that next level where, key strategic decisions are made, where, the discussions about the culture of the business are made. And so that there was just something about that was so important to me. It was this next level that felt like I hadn't unlocked yet. And I really felt that I was ready for it and that I needed to work out how to break through and make it into that room, so to speak. I think that was the ambition that I had. I've never put a particular target on where I wanted to get to, but I've never felt that I've hit it yet. So I wasn't at a point where I thought, well, this is a great level for me to stay
Mm-hmm.
at. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
me. Like, I'm good. Every level I've been at, I've always felt like, but there's another gear that I can go to here. I think I can do the next level. And I always think I hope that when I've made it to the capacity of my potential, I'll know and I'll stop pushing for that next level. I haven't stopped yet, so we'll see.
Maybe there's always another level.
Maybe there is always another level. Yeah, I felt I was ready to contribute more and be more of a driving force within a business. And I wanted to be a trusted advisor to the CEO, right? And, I'm working in Gymshark. I've got the opportunity to work with Ben Francis, who is like such an amazing entrepreneur. Like, the story of the business is so amazing. And I wanted to be in that group that was really talking about and thinking about what the next stage of Gymshark would be. And so it was really important to me. Almost like weirdly too important, but it was an overriding thing for me at that stage.
Yeah. Yeah, and no, it's interesting referencing Ben, and we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? Where he has this trait, if you like, which is something like, I think to use his own words, it would be something like, I don't spend too much time thinking about yesterday or last week or last year. I'm very much thinking about next week and next year.
Yeah.
And he said something, he framed it so brilliantly, and in a way it's a cliche, but I think he has it so embodied that when he says it, it really lands. He said, failure doesn't define you, like, or your failures don't define you. And I thought, what, it's like, that is just so much how he rolls. Like, there are going to be some failures along the way, but I'm so much focused on where I'm going and what I'm trying to achieve. I don't get too concerned about the failures along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a superpower for him. He is so forward looking and so resilient, and he moves on from a blow literally at lightning speed. in a way that I'm really trying to learn to emulate some of that. It's not my natural instinct at all. So if I make a mistake as a perfectionist control freak, it literally like it's in some ways it's the end of my world. I'm like, oh my God, this is just the worst thing that's happened. And so being able to find a way to separate when something happens that wasn't, the best result or the perfect way for it to be done, that it doesn't fundamentally change who I am, how I feel about myself, my capabilities, etc. So that it doesn't hold me back, because the fear of making those mistakes definitely would have been a reason that I would have said no to things earlier in my career in a way that I don't now.
Right. And what I've observed is that that's really shifted for you as well, in the last, whatever it is, couple of years, where, and I think a nice way of the way, like a nice piece of evidence, if you like. And I think you've reflected on this yourself, which is that where in the past, and maybe not the so distant past, if you like had a speaking gig coming up, there'd be a lot of preparation.
Yes.
Right.
I would have said no to some stuff.
Because I just haven't got the time to prepare as sufficiently as I'd need to.
Exactly. It's either it's going to consume me, or I'm going to do it and not be great. Because if I'm going to be a speaker, I'm not trying to just make it through. Like, I'm trying to be an inspirational speaker so that someone leaves there going, oh my God, that changed my life. Like, because that's the bar that I set for myself. And so the challenge that I had to overcome on my journey on speaking was that the only way to get better at speaking is to speak. And if you're speaking, people are watching. Therefore, they're watching your journey of development. And I just had to make peace with that, because however much practice I did in a hidden room, I was never going to emerge into my first speaking gig as an amazing speaker, because that's just not how that skill works. And so I think with that one, I had to very much, and I was open about it. I talked about that as being the key thing that I was trying to develop, so that people knew I was trying to develop in that skill. And I just had to, I sort of said yes to lots of things and lots of different types of speaking opportunities over quite a condensed period of time, just to force myself through it. And I'm like, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to lose sleep. I'm going to lose, weekends of time, because I'm going to have to over prep for this in a way that isn't sustainable for the future. But if I do that for 6 months, that's going to give me the grounding to be able to move forward in a way that it doesn't consume me. It doesn't, like, the nerves don't overtake me. I'm able to enjoy it at some point.
But so there are kind of two facets to that, aren't there? On the one hand, there's the confidence of capability. So I can see that I'm getting, I can do this. Like I can show up and do a good job. So I'm getting the confidence of my capability. But there's also something else, which is maybe, to my mind, even more important, which is that sense of, again, it comes back to that I'm backing myself. So I'm, I know that just by showing up, I can create some value. Even if I wasn't to do a great job, like I was to fluff my lines or something, or forget what my agenda was or something like that, I still have the confidence in myself, the sense of the value that I can bring just by being here, right?
Yeah.
That it's okay, that I can feel more relaxed doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's that kind of confidence from capability, but then there's that kind of more like intrinsic confidence. Right?
Yeah. And I think, I wasn't, as a kid, people would have said I was really confident. Like, my parents would have always said I was really confident. I was probably more confident than my brother in those early stages. And so there's always been a sort of solid inner confidence. And then as I got into the workplace, it was probably just challenged by this fear of failure, kind of negative self-talk, kind of perfectionist, fear, control freak, like all of those things that it's like, well, gosh, I can't control the outcome here. This might go wrong. And sometimes that would have led me to say no. But I think at the heart of it, the reason that when I did dive into it and really felt that I made a difference in how I was able to perform, ultimately, there is an inner thought there of, but I think I can be great at this. Like, I think I can be a great speaker, and I want to be a great speaker. So I just need to get on and do it, right? Like, that's just stop thinking about it and just do. So I just said yes to loads of external things. I spoke lots internally within our business as well. And it sort of all all came to a pinnacle over that journey in our year-end strategy cascade that we had a full year ago.
Yeah.
Which was a big kind of on stage moment where literally there was nerves through every part of my body. Like I was probably visibly shaking. My throat was dry. Like my head was sort of spinning. But I did it, right, and it wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't the best speaker ever at that point, but I delivered a good presentation.
Mhm.
A couple of things went wrong. My mic failed, and I managed to sort of navigate it. So I was like, okay, well that could have been a disaster, but it wasn't. I sort of managed it, and so it just gave me the confidence. And as I walked off stage last year, I just remember thinking, oh, I wish I could have calmed down enough to enjoy it, because I didn't enjoy that. I survived that.
Mm-hmm.
I was still kind of shaking as I came off. The adrenaline was like insane. And then fast track 12 months from there, last week we had the same year-end strategy day, similar setup, similar stage. I still prepped. I still had nerves, but it was less, it didn't dominate my whole body. I was able to calm really quickly to the point where I'm like, oh, actually, I think I'm actually enjoying this. Like, this is actually now something where I feel I could gain enjoyment from it in the future. It's always going to require me to prepare, but I think great presenters who look like they're kind of calm and slick and like it's all natural often are well prepared. So I think you have to be well prepared to look natural.
Yeah, and I think the nerves, like that's just energy in some ways. It's not. Maybe the goal shouldn't be to never have nerves, because that's energy, and energy is appropriate for stepping up onto a stage. And also there's a I don't know whether it's irony or paradox, but it's that funny thing that it actually takes real confidence to be willing to be vulnerable on stage. And I love that you were sort of willing to invite people on the journey with you. Like, hey, this is a big deal for me, or, I'm learning this. But if the sort of irony is that, of course, that actually is a statement of real confidence to have that willingness to not have to front it out and go, oh no, I'm going to pretend, on all of that.
And, that's something that's come over time. Like I did, so sort of asking for help, being vulnerable, those were not things that earlier in my career would have felt natural for me, right? Like asking for help would have felt like me admitting I can't do that. I wouldn't have done that. And so that's something that I've really had to learn over time and learn from some, that there are points in where my life and my career have sort of crossed over that have been really tough moments where I've had to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And it's been the only way through it. And so I think I've had to sort of learn that. And then now it's more natural in my day-to-day now, but definitely wasn't easy earlier in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's I'm a little conscious of the time, and there's actually so much I'd like to get into here, but so I'm going to jump around a little bit. Just in terms of other lessons learned as a leader, and now you're around the chief's table, you're very much part of that, building and then delivering the strategy of this amazing business, Gymshark, and I wonder. Well, one question is like, what are some of the other things that you've learned about leadership? But I'm also going to preempt that with something that we talked about the other day, which was this idea of having a CEO mindset as a chief around the table, that you don't just sit in your lane, but that you have something more like a CEO mindset that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think for me, like if I think about how we're evolving as a broader executive team and how we come together and what helps us to be successful, I think for me, mindset is everything. So how I try to approach my interactions with other people is, not what would I do in my role here, but almost like, well, what would I want to be true if I was Ben? Or how do I, if I'm if in this exchange I'm trying to make sure that the other person is successful, what does that look like? So if I'm doing a thing that underpins and makes sure that this individual is successful, how would I do that differently? And I think that really helps me. I think just mindset in general really helps me, because I think for me, when I'm having moments of real stress, it's normally when, if I step back from it, I'm assuming some sort of negative intent from somebody else. Whereas I think if you can force yourself just to go, okay, if I assume 100% positive intent from everybody that I'm interacting with here, how do I now feel about this challenge that I'm facing? Or if I feel I'm taking it personally, like if something's raised and I'm like, oh, is that a suggestion that I didn't do a good enough job? Because again, pushing all my perfectionist buttons. But if I can push that to the middle of the table and just look at it objectively and go, okay, it's not about me. It's not a personal thing. It's a thing here in the middle of the table that we're all objectively looking at. How do I think about it differently? And so I do think for me, certainly at this point, like that mindset is so important. That sense of, it's not about me trying to make my team look good here. It's about us as a collective, the business needs to achieve. So whether that comes through my team, your team, a combination of all of those things together, it doesn't matter. So we're very much in a space where high collaboration is what's needed for the business to be successful. And that has to start at the top, because you can't encourage teams to collaborate with each other if they look up and see their leaders walking in different directions.
It's a real game changer, isn't it? And there's something about it that it's like, how does everyone step above their own ego? I mean, ego is a good thing if you're using it well, but it can also be a real limiting factor. And like you say, if it stops being about how can I protect, my role, my function, my team, how can I make sure we're looking good, and you get above that to, what does this look like if I'm wanting us to win?
Yeah.
Like, how does the CEO think about it? What does the CEO need? Then that really change. And I think it gets nuanced, doesn't it? Because I think probably we could all be quite skilled at kidding ourselves. That's what we're doing, when actually we're just trying to look good. And to really get into that authentic place of, I'm here for the team, and I'm wanting us to win as a team. How can I be helpful?
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but I think it's profound.
It's really, really difficult. And the ego thing is interesting. So I genuinely try to approach everything, if I can, with no ego. But we've all got one, and mine bubbles up just as much as the next person at different points in time, right? So it's definitely there, but it's a conscious thing for me. So again, if I'm feeling frustrated and I sit down and try and, journal out how I'm feeling, or however I try to work my way through that, there's normally some ego at play. It's normally like, well, I'm feeling a bit hurt about this, or I feel like my hard work hasn't been recognized here. Well, I'm like, well, that's my ego, because it probably has, and I can probably draw.
But that's such a big one, isn't it? Like, if you can shift that from like that need for recognition, which I think is so human, and we all have it, and like, hey, what about all that work I did, or what about that great performance I did? Did no one see that?
Yeah.
But if we can really get above that, and like we can somehow disentangle from the impetus that creates to sort of, that need to be recognized.
Yeah.
It takes us to a whole nother level, doesn't it?
It really does, but it does require such a strong level of inner confidence.
Yes.
It requires you to not to feel like you're having to prove yourself, because I think if you feel like you're having to prove yourself, and then you feel like something you're doing isn't being noticed and recognized, like, oh, well, I need to somehow get somebody to notice this thing because I'm trying to prove myself here. I think I've got to a point, both in my just career generally and just probably how I feel about myself, but also within the environment that I'm in terms of who I work for and who I work alongside, that I know that people trust me and believe in me. I know that people have a sense that I can bring a lot to the table. And I know in myself that I can do a good job. And so I can just calm down. So I don't feel I'm on a prove it journey. And so I don't need to worry as much about what I feel is or isn't seen. And often you think something isn't seen and it actually is. It's just that that person maybe hasn't communicated to you that they've observed it. I think 9 times out of 10, people see the good things that you're doing and they will appreciate them. And I always talk about like the just you can be the person that passed the ball so that the goal can be made. You don't need to be the person with your foot on the ball when it goes in. And if we were all watching a football game, we'd all observe all of these passes and value them. And sometimes in business, just because you think they're not seen, you think they're not valued. I think it's so important to me to create a culture where people feel that passing of the ball is really, really valuable, and them teeing up someone else to be able to nail it is as important as them feeling like they were the goal scorer. But that's hard because it needs a very mature environment to enable that.
I love that analogy, and I love the way you framed it as I'm not on a proving it journey, but I'm on a journey of where I'm, passing the balls tiered up for other people. And I also think that's a really important reflection, Carly, that to create that culture, it really does have to happen at the top.
Yeah.
And so, when you're living that, you're embodying that, you're demonstrating that, but really living it at that top level in the business, then I think it's got a chance of disseminating through the business. But there's just no way it's going to happen if the top team aren't doing it.
Yeah.
Because then it's just like we're kidding ourselves, right? That's not what's happening here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, I've just been so impressed by, and I've had the opportunity to connect with Ben and to connect with a couple of the other team members in the Exco, and it's like there is that really genuine sense that I get, really deeply felt sense of like there's something collective going on here. Like there's something bigger than our individual ego or individual trajectories, and so I just wonder, is there anything particularly that you would reflect on when you think about that kind of disseminating that culture through the business and what you're seeing in the culture as something like you would say, well, this is one of our real strengths at Gymshark, culturally, internally in the business, perhaps?
I think everybody is a good person, right? Like I always remember when I was at RBS, I remember I called up, I was in the digital side of the business, and I called up somebody in the stores side of the business to just kick off an idea that we could collaborate on together. And I just remember that interaction just being like, I don't know why you're calling me. You're kind of in the digital part of the business. I'm over here in the stores parts of the business. I'm doing my thing. You do your thing. We don't need to work together on this idea. And it just was really wasn't well received at all. And they just didn't have a desire to collaborate on any kind of end outcome. They would just wanted to do their own thing. So it was just a complete non-starter. If I compare that to Gymshark and somebody approached you and said, hey, I've got a great idea, it would be welcomed with such open arms and such positivity. It's a place where everybody is so focused on being the best. And if you just think about the mindset of the brand, it's all about putting in the work and the effort every day to keep this continuous self-improvement. And then everybody just applies that to work. We're like, okay, well, that was great. Well, how can it be better tomorrow? And we're immediately on to how can it improve? And so everybody's open to ideas, to collaborate with each other. And, we're on a journey towards having that kind of natural collaboration be part of how everybody through the whole business works. But the start point of it is everybody's open to helping everybody else. You would never, hang up the phone and be like, I'm not going to support that. So everybody feels like they're on this collective mission for the business in the same direction. Not all of our processes are perfect yet, and that's what we're working on. But the spirit of that lives within the business. So there's a positive energy. There's a can-do mindset. There's very much a kind of solutions focus. So every problem will have a solution. Let's just get the right minds in the room, and we can figure this thing out really quickly. There's a speed to it. So if we don't kind of hang around on decisions for ages, if there's a great idea, we'll move pretty quickly and crack on with it. All helped by the fact that Ben doesn't over worry about if something's a failure, right? Because he's not overthinking it, and therefore we're able to move at speed through some things that could go wrong. But we know that as a team, when that does happen, when something does go wrong, we can collectively come together and pivot really quickly into a different direction. So that's a real positive in the business. But there's just this huge swell of positive energy, I would say, is how I would describe the feeling.
I certainly feel that. I felt that in my engagement with the business, and both from afar, but also being in the offices, um, and to me, there's something really coherent around the internal culture and the external culture, you know, uh, and that this is a business that was founded on um, like a collective endeavor. It's kind of community founded business, if you like.
Yeah.
Yes, Ben's inspiration, and it's sort of his DNA. But then in a way, I kind of see that also kind of filtering through from the top, where he's someone who is, I mean, in a way I would say, like, there's something about him that's low ego. I mean, I'm sure he's got a very strong ego too, probably wouldn't be where he is if he didn't, but there's like that sense of like just listening, like, and inquiring and interested and curious.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of see that kind of positive, open culture, like through all of the business, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And we like to spend time with each other too, right? Like I think, if we're traveling somewhere, then everybody's meeting up in the morning to go for a run together. And like there's a general sense of just people enjoy being around each other. There's definitely just low ego, and there's a humility through the whole business. And
It's a
stay
nice
humble is
word.
one of our core values. It's what's inherent in the business. And so that
Sorry,
absolutely
say that word again. What was the core
stay
value?
humble.
Stay humble.
So
Yeah.
that's one of our core values, and is just critically important to the way that we all show up for each other on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I love that. Carly, I'm aware we're on time, and I feel like there really genuinely is so much more that we could get into, and I'd love to talk about. So maybe this is going to be chapter one, or episode one
That's
of
good.
the Carly guesting. But thank you so much, Carly. This has been really fantastic, and I think yeah, I just think you're such a great demonstration. There was more I wanted to ask about how you see yourself as a leader, kind of bringing other people up and being that kind of inspiration, that role model, which I think you are. And I think Gymshark's a great place to be doing it, but also that you're getting to do that beyond Gymshark as well. And yeah, there's just lots I would love to have got into there, but maybe next time.
They can be for part two.
Yeah, part two. Carly, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.